Hello, welcome everybody. This is Mihai Algiu and founder of Circle of Being Somatic Shadow Work and Somatic Psychotherapist and Kiloby Inquiries Facilitator. And this is my guest and mentor, friend, teacher, Scott Kiloby. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks for having me for the 30th time. I think you were saying it's like
I think it's the 29th time. I was just thinking before the interview, I realized that and I felt touched and I had some tears of gratitude, and it's almost like the download of this few years of my being immersed in this modality in the Kiloby inquiries, and it really changed my life and helped me free myself from a lot of suffering that was very elusive and pernicious and like problematic, in spite of having done spiritual work for decades. So thank you.
Thank you.
So Scott is a spiritual teacher, non-dual teacher, a writer of several books on non-duality, and then lately his path took him towards developing certain recovery centers using awareness-based modality, and then his path took him towards developing several modalities like living inquiries, and recently, last few years, the KI, Kiloby inquiries, that has been developing and unfolding and very exciting. And there's a pretty large community now online, as well as, we started to meet in person too, like hundreds of people who are very interested and dedicating to applying this to tackle our suffering kind of directly. And also this is 29th interview, and I will put here the playlist with all of them. And I'm just going to say, I'm looking at the title. So it's like, first one was on combining non-duality teachings with somatic inquiry. The second one was reverse inquiry, multi-purpose deprogramming tool. The third one, we're talking about the peacemaker, ego identity, self-inquiry and ego inquiry need each other, principles of somatic processing, authenticity, shame, non-dual deprogramming. These are all topics that we tackled. The mechanism of self-repression, ego deconstruction via somatic inquiry, unlocking repression. We talked about addiction, several episodes. We talked about understanding trauma, several episodes. We talked about relationships as an evolutionary tool and healing the attachment wound. Then we talked even about principles and pitfalls on the path of awakening, the art of feeling. Oh, I had a dialogue here with Dan, the co-developer, instrumental person in the development of KI. That's some more shame, guilt, hiding, conscience, morality, and repression. We talked about levels of love, self-love, and love repression. Then we even talked about benefits and pitfalls on the role of the teacher and the guru. We talked about embodiment and dimensions of seeing the unconscious. Then we realized that, wow, that's a lot of it's complex path here with many tools, the KI. We try to make it easier and walking the KI labyrinth for new people, what to start with. Then as the map developed, we are going to talk about the map. We had like 4 episodes on the map, roadmap to true embodied freedom. And then the last one was the link between trauma, repression, and the inner child. So I will have all of this in a playlist in this video. So I suggest you check them out if you're interested. But this one, it will be on the concept that we have been working all along, basically, of this, the inside out path. And from one angle, this is like episode 29, focusing on this, but this, we're doing this kind of, we were discovering and talking and verifying and applying all of these tools and concepts, which it revealed to Scott, to us, that, oh, wow, this is a different style of approaching the spiritual path. Yeah, so I would like that we talk about this today. And also, I think we both realize that, you know, this is not real. There's no path right there, or like, you know, Moses with the tablets that, hey, this is the truth of God. These are just symbols, and these are like tools to work on ourselves, you know.
Can I say something about that real quick?
Yes.
Because I was, as you were explaining all these videos and interviews that we've done, and all the context is, and the skills, the way I like to think of it is a thorn to remove a thorn. Is like, I like that old Buddhist concept, because so all we're doing is we're creating context that helps us with things that we've missed on the path. And so we create this new thorn, these new skills, but we don't worship the thorn. We don't create a new thorn to worship it. We want to see the emptiness even of the concepts here too. We don't want to land on any of them, but they're helpful to help us get out of some of the stuff that we were in before, to remove the thorns. I like that as a light way to hold this.
And I can see, like, initially, so many of us, and especially you, many of us, we were coming from having been deep practitioners of Buddhist, Zen, or non-dual paths, and we attained certain progress or some freedom from suffering, but then there were some things missed. We missed a lot of things in connected to the body, keeping the score, and addiction, compulsion, repression, and deficiency stories. So the beginning of KI seemed to be as a way to correct that, to balance that, the bypassing of certain things. But by now, and that's what we're doing now, it became apparent to you that, hey, let's not just, you know, go with the old train and try to correct it. How about let's start from the very beginning, the path, in a way, for somebody new that comes in, so we don't have to correct later. So that's, as far as I understand from you, came this concept of the inside out path, as opposed to the outside in path. Could you speak a little bit about the, you know, to understand more the inside out path? Maybe it's helpful to explain the outside in, so to say. I think you are unmuted.
I think it's connected to my own repression, and that I came in led by other teachers who, for whatever reason, weren't focused on trauma and repression. So when I had to follow my own authentic thing to discover that. I couldn't, you know, I had to do that. And so as I was working through the repression, I was still, I don't know how to say it. There's a difference between arguing against an existing reality and creating a new one. There's a quote by somebody out there. So still coming out of repression, I was trying to help people who were in that outside in path already, instead of creating my own. But coming out of repression, it's really comfortable. You can just speak for yourself and create and do what you want now. Now I can do that. So I'm not really answering so much a path that's already out there. By correcting that, we're creating a new one, which we think does correct it, but it's a path in and of itself now. It stands on its own, basically, as a path now. Instead of just correcting something else, instead of arguing with an existing reality, we've created a path here. We can still argue with that. There may be plenty of criticism that we have to understand that in order to move in a different way, but ultimately it's about a new path. That's how I see it.
Mm-hmm. And the old path that we're trying to correct, the outside in, was like, the framework was to go towards transcendence, or realizing the ultimate reality of the ultimate identity, like the presence, and focusing on that. Okay, so can you touch
Yeah.
just is more clear now the difference?
Yeah, because if you watched me on YouTube, what I was doing, I was differentiating the practices here from the kinds of practices that you might see in other. Okay, so at first it was a response to my own path. It was like I came through from the outside in path. I came for transcendence. I didn't come for anger, repression, and trauma work. That's not why I came here. I came for transcendence because now I understand now that I didn't want to open to that. Like on some unconscious level, the repression and the trauma was driving me here, first of all, but I didn't know it. So by discovering it later in my path, my question is, where does one start looking at that? If that's a big part of our suffering, if that's driving a lot of suffering, where do you start? And I was trying to say to people who were in non-dual teachings that there's another way, but I think as I sit with it, so there is another way compared to like the teachings out there that point to awareness and that don't get to the root. The outside or the inside out path is the other way, or one of the another way. But it's more than just a response to the non-dual teachings out there. It's a response to any modality or practice that from the beginning doesn't alert you to the root of suffering, whatever that is. So that's a big part of the inside out path, is we discover from the beginning, what are the programs that are running in a deep unconscious level that are producing my suffering? So that's what it is. And so it's not just a response to a sort of an outside in, like really transcendent non-dual teaching that doesn't deal with any of that. It just points to awareness, but any other practice that doesn't do that for us. In other words, you could start a simple mindfulness practice and not have any interest in non-dual awakening. But because of your mindfulness practice, which is, again, a good practice, we're not saying it's a really good practice, actually. It's part of KI, mindfulness is. But if you don't realize that in the beginning, if you start a mindfulness practice, and like so many of us, you can't see where the stuff is coming from. You can't see that the trigger that you're experiencing is coming because you repressed hurt. Then you could benefit from inside out, because we're showing you from the beginning that what your mindfulness practice might not show you, so that when that comes up, that trigger, that shadow, now you know from inside out that's coming from repression. And you also then would know that probably your mindfulness practice won't get to it, because you learn also in the beginning that this stuff is hidden in the body. So I don't think it's just the non-dual thing. It's any first dimension practice. It's like providing another way to another practice in there to get to the root early.
Yeah. So the mindfulness practices, let's say Thich Nhat Hanh is a great teacher of mindfulness and Buddhist teacher. And when I was into Thich Nhat Hanh, I was having this idea that this is it. This is all I need. This is the ultimate. And I just need to do more of this, to do it more and more often and deeper. And that will solve all my problems. And before that, I was in some progressive path, like a fourth way, which was kind of very similar. Then I was into the direct path, non-dual. And again, so what you are saying and what we have discovered is that, although we appreciate in KI and we encourage for people to engage in a regular mindfulness practice, a meditation practice, resting as awareness, welcoming the totality of the experience, and not being checked out or identified. So that's an important stepping stone. We discovered that, okay, I meditate. I still meditate now. Even before the interview, I meditate a little bit because I like it. But let's say there may be something, a little contraction or a little tension or a little sense of unease that I'm aware of. And then I'm just letting it be. And I'm just allowing, witnessing. And then if I meditate for like 10, 15, 20 minutes, then that will go down. And then I feel more spacious and calm. And then I'm like, okay, thank you, that was good. But you are saying that hey, that little sense of unease, is just the, this little sense of unease is just the flower of something that has deeper roots. And by you just witnessing a little bit, it's not going to go away. It's going to come back over and over. Yeah. So maybe, so Scott brought the map of 3 dimensions. So the KI inside out path. So there are 3 types of work, so to say, 3 types of practices or 3 types of focus, and that are necessary. And what we talk so far, this mindfulness, non-duality, even practices like what am I, and what is that which is aware, and is that which is aware limited or not? So all of these, they are part of what we call first dimension.
Yeah, well, I brought this up for a reason too, because you were talking about mindfulness, which we would call as a first dimension practice, and you were talking about how you were articulating how certain things wouldn't necessarily arise. It would be in the body. You were alluding to that. So I wanted to just bring the map up, because with the map, the red lines, we'll see here in 3rd dimension, this red line represents the core fear that we, the survival mechanism programming that we have, how it's run by fear. And then also there are other repressed emotions in that. This is deeply held in the body and then often hidden when you're in 1st dimension. We've said this before, but I think it's important to say on the inside out path that if you're sitting there in meditation and something comes up that's like any of those things on the left side here, a shadow, a trigger, a compulsion, you wouldn't necessarily at all be able to be conscious of the root programming of that because it's so buried. And that's the thing that people don't realize in 1st dimension until you realize it, that some of the root programming that's creating the different things isn't arising to awareness. So you could be mindful of all the effects of that for a long time. And that's actually very helpful, to be mindful and allowing of all the effects of the repression and the fear.
Yeah.
But it doesn't get to the root. And that's the whole point. But we don't make a whole interview about that. But that's the whole point. We have to go inside out. We have to pick up different skills to get to the root on the inside out path, other than 1st dimension stuff.
Yeah, so there's this myth, I guess. There's some myth somehow we inherited in these teachings coming in the West, that, witnessing, meditating, being aware is going to be enough. And that will lead to finding your true self. And that is definitely enough. And if you have this awakening, which is, I'm still watching non-dual videos, and there's a lot of videos out there where people have an awakening, and then they do a video after 2 weeks, and then they are like full of joy and enthusiasm. And the myth is that, okay, now that everything's going to unravel like a sweater, you found the core thread, and this awakening happened to our true nature, and everything is unraveling. And so therefore, the 1st dimension is somehow enough. And when I was, in like famous and popular and good non-dual teachers, the idea was like, life will bring you suffering and triggers and a sense of lack. But if it comes to you, just investigate it. But otherwise, don't dig in. Don't dig in. It's just, if it comes to you, look at it, of course, and trust that things will come now because you are more conscious. Things will come now, and it's going to happen by itself. And but I was actually recommended, hey, don't dig into the subconscious. Don't go, because it's endless and you're going to get lost there. And why stay with, why be interested in what you are not, So, yeah.
I wrote you a little note there because I want to say something about that real quick. I know you're in a little bit thought, but just like that, if a teacher says don't dig in, what we've learned from KI is those kinds of phrases are, the nervous system loves those because it keeps us safe. So it can sound like a teacher saying that from wisdom when they could be saying it from a need for safety. So you have to always verify for yourself everything that every teacher says in terms of they give you a pointer. Like that's what we're doing in KI, because if you have if a nervous system has a command in there, don't dig, that is not coming from the non-dual teachings. That's coming from childhood and not wanting to feel something or something like that. Don't feel that, don't go there. You have to be really careful when you're a seeker, because you could be picking up pointers that are actually trauma commands and responses in your body. And nobody's clarifying that for you, that they're giving you a pointer that mirrors your trauma response.
Yeah.
So yeah, just wanted to say that, something like that.
So I guess here you discovered gradually the second dimension, that actually the sense of unease and a sense of self-sabotage and stagnation in my life and laziness and choosing unfulfilling relationships and having compulsions. Actually, they are coming from coming from somewhere else. So we discovered that to open the hood. Let's open the hood and let's start to explore, investigate, and not just mentally. Yeah. So this is so it's very somatic. So it's investigating the mental aspect and the emotional aspect and the body aspect. So here is like the second dimension. It's almost like we are going into the area like as a psychotherapy, so to say. And so, yeah, can you just touch briefly on the second dimension, benefits, and how it, and Mike.
Sorry about that. I also want to say something that I was saying recently to a green checkmark facilitator of ours, is that when you're in first dimension practice, you can only see so much there. You can actually have a very deep non-dual realization, and you can go really deep states of realization in first dimension, but it's very difficult to see the trauma and repression. It is really, really difficult. So first dimension, if you're sitting in first dimension practice or as a teacher, you would probably totally disagree with everything that we're saying, most likely. Because when you're in first dimension, you can't see second or third dimension of practice, and you can't see the insights or the realizations that come from it. And when you get to second dimension, you still can't see third dimension. You can't see what you can't see.
Yeah.
But you can see first dimension. You can see what we were doing in first dimension. You can say that has great value. That's included. But here in second dimension, there's other skills that become important. So prompting things up that wouldn't otherwise arise. In first dimension, that happens. And so when we start prompting things up, I think we get, one thing that happens is we get closer to seeing the core identities, like you said, sense of lack, the sense that there's something wrong with me, I think can be more illuminated, and that can help with repression and, depression and anxiety and a lot of different things, to be able to meet the core identity of I'm not good enough or I'm unlovable. So that gets to that, I think, in some cases more in second dimension, because that has somatic roots. Like it's a felt sense of being not good enough. It's not just a story. It's very deeply felt. So there we can have access to that more, which we could even find more benefit from spiritual practice because of that. Like definitely. And so that's one of the values, is just being able to prompt something up and getting to some more of the somatic roots and of the identity. But still, you can't see, there's a resistance between second and third dimension for a lot of people because they can't see it. They can't see the insights yet in the third dimension. So it's almost like I'm inviting people to understand that, and understand that almost all of us start from a place of resistance to third dimension because we can't see what it's being pointed to. So it requires a real sense of openness and open-mindedness to listen to something different, and let your defenses be processed, because you can't see what we're talking about until you verify for yourself. And that's what I've learned to say to people. I totally understand why people would disagree with me or argue or have issues with me until they verify. Once you verify, then you move into third dimension. Yeah.
Just to slow it down a little bit here, a little bit more on the second dimension before we go to the third. what you said, reminding me, like, I had the phase of, I was doing a lot of Vipassana and going to Vipassana 10-day retreats, and which is, you know, witnessing sensations and thoughts and concentration, and but doing it a lot without much stimulus. So it was some kind of no phone, no talking, no reading, no TV, no nothing, no eye contact with people. So I remember that. So at some point in like day 5 or so, I just started crying. I just started crying. The sadness came up, and another day I was shaking. And then it passed, and then towards the end, my mind was clear, and I really, my ego thought that I got enlightened, you know, and I was having imaginations that I'm going to tell people now and all of that. And I had some other friends that had the same thing. So now later again, went now more like a few years ago to retreat with Francis and Lucille, and we're doing some yogic non-dual practices, and as I was doing it, I feel this something happening, and then again sad, and then it kind of went away, and then there was, the idea was like, oh great, there was this is releasing, and yeah, but yeah, the idea that there is actually, there was just like a 2% of what was in there. And actually there was much more there. And I guess in the first dimension, we call this, hey, there is some sense of lack. There's a sense of separation. Yeah, but in the second dimension, we're like, well, what's that supposed to mean? Let's look at this sense of lack and sense of separation. Let's investigate it. And then we discovered that this sense of lack and a sense of something is missing, something is wrong, and sense of separation, which is just intellectual, abstract now, it becomes deficiency. I'm not good enough. There's something wrong with me. I can't be myself. I have to hide my emotions. I can't ask for what I need. And there's a lot of sadness that doesn't even come up, or it's a lot of anger that I don't even know I have. And definitely I cannot show it to anybody. So somehow in the first dimension, it was just some vague sense of separation. In the second dimension, now it's more crisp what that is about, you know?
That's beautiful. Yeah, I didn't know you were going there. You said a couple of things there that are important. And in your own words, you described the process of awakening embodiment through KI, because I've experienced that too, where you definitely get to deeper roots in second dimension. That's the great thing about the dimensions. They're very helpful.
Yeah.
Even if we say they're limiting, we have to acknowledge how helpful they are. But one thing you said before that was, if I can remember right,
talked about the Vipassana, the non-dual retreat.
No, it was something else. Give me 1 second here. There's a really good point that you made. Well, you started to mention the potential landings or bypassing, and you sort of alluded to it. Like, here's how I'm articulating that these days, because usually when people are in second dimension, they've done a lot of work. They might even be teachers or facilitators or coaches or something at that level. Sometimes they've done a lot of work, and it feels like for some of them who haven't gone into the repression and trauma, if they haven't, that what's happening is the fear is operating still. The unconscious, sometimes frozen fear from trauma is still operating, but they haven't gotten to it yet. So there's something about saying I'm done that serves the ego structure. There's something that serves it. I keep seeing it in so many different people. And you also mentioned how, like, if you have a release, like an anger, how the mind wants to come in and say, I'm now done. What is that right there? Because that goes away in third dimension. The mind is trying to, because the mind that says it's done, I think it's connected to the repression and the trauma. It's like it wants to be done because there's a fear of feeling something.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing. When you're in that second dimension bypass, you would be the last to know that that's going on. Like, you would literally be the last to know, because you're trying to seek safety from the insights and the things that happen. So the bigger question is not, is it happening? It's clearly happening. in second dimension, the landing. But how do you spot it is my issue. Is like I want to help people with it when they become open to, just like if I would have met you 2 years ago or whenever you were with Francis and you were talking about this sadness, or even that you were done, like if I could have met you right there in that moment and said, let's go down into your body and say this, I don't get anything right now out of saying I'm done. And then if there's a somatic response, despite what your mind is saying, we know the body's still keeping a score on that. So we trust that. That's what we trust. We don't trust this because this is how we're landing in second dimension. You know, we say things that we want to be true, but they keep us safe. So we have to check into the body to see what's really true for us. And that's what I wanted to say about the landing in second dimensions. We really have to trust the body almost completely to go deeper, I think, at that point, not the mind, the resume or anything.
Yeah, I think there's the so-called spiritual ego identity that likes to be done and to be recognized. Yeah, it was this ego vanity that I had before the Vipassana. and then there was like, oh yeah, yes, and so wanting recognition and being seen and being special. So the thing that I had all my childhood, wanting recognition, to be seen and be special, now is into the spiritual path.
Mm-hmm.
But also there's some innocence of, like, I guess through the first dimension practices that were arduous, I had a temporary state of an awakened, I don't know, a couple of days, you know, and then my body was clear and everything was good, and there was very juicy and true and yummy. And then there's some innocence and lack of knowledge, lack of, you know, saying, oh, that's it, I have arrived, you know. Yeah. So now with the development of and you know, we must say that there are many teachings or good therapeutical practices or shadow work modalities. So the second dimension is like you try to start to open up a little bit below the surface of the ocean. You see what's like, you know, 200 meters below, and there are all kind of stuff lurking there that when I was meditating, I didn't know I have them, you know, like deficiency core programs and some kind of utilities. Like I believe that it's not safe to get close to people, and I believe that it's not safe to let a woman into my heart because then I'm going to lose her and I'm going to feel lost. But all of this, I had no idea that was in there, you know.
Yeah.
So
Okay, can I ask you a question? Turn the interview on. It's because I asked someone else this, another green checkmark facilitator, is you go from not knowing that's in there. What did it take for you to discover that was there? Like, I know it was the KI tools helped, of course, but there's other qualities to it. Can you answer that? Because I think there's a lot of people who feel that way, that they don't know that there's a lot there still, and they might start discovering it. But I just want to hear from you, like, your process to discover that and then become open to look at it.
I mean, first of all, it was you know, the teaching, the map is important, because I was like, oh, okay, so Scott is saying this, makes sense to me. I verify some of it it's elusive, so I'm open, I'm trying to apply it. This was having better tools that was important. Second, an essential ingredient is suffering and hitting my head over and over of the same relational pattern, and having recurring, ongoing, unfulfilling relationships that I tried everything on them, all the teachings, everything, psychedelic work, everything. And so having suffering and all my tools didn't work. Also, I was more conscious, more aware. So I started to be aware of this somatic, the contractions and tensions and things like that, they became more pronounced, more pronounced. So at some point, I started to use the third dimension tools and to realize, oh my God, this is not just some tension in my chest, that it's just a sensation that I'm trying to allow and be that in which it arises. I tried that and it actually works because it goes down. But my relation of unfulfilling patterns continue. Yeah. So I realized that, oh, actually I'm suppressing. There's actually grief there. There is sadness. There's fear. And then, so I started to use the third dimension tools, and I was motivated by suffering and tired of also using substances to alleviate that discomfort and yuckiness and unfulfillment. So I started using things, and then as I started to dig in, I started to dig into the mud, although my beloved teachers told me not to. The earth kind of opened, and then it was like just like a lot of grief, which was connected with what happened now, that, you know, I broke up with my partner, and I don't know why I broke up with her, and I keep doing that, and then I want to get back to her, and I'm like, I'm crazy, what is this? So I find out a little grief, and using the third dimension tools and repression, and it starts to go deeper and deeper, and I realized that it opened to a whole underground reservoir of grief and loss and sadness and fear and aloneness and despair that was prior to breaking up with my girlfriend, that went all the way to major traumatic experiences in childhood that were there all along. So basically with the third dimension tools, it helped me to, this was gradual, but because it was scary, and sometimes I would just suddenly have crying for like 5 minutes, and it's like, whoa, okay, but then it will never come. So at some point, and this is pretty recent, more like a few months ago, I really went very deep into the shaft of that pain, and I would end up, actually I would end up intentionally stirring it because I knew it's there, and I knew that it will stay down and buried. So I would intentionally go for it. I will really go for it every day, twice a day. And that contraction, that sense of uneasiness, and in my belly, in the chest, in this, it turned out being soul crushing grief, and this is so-called abandonment, and I started tearing up, and then I started crying, and then I started wailing, like wailing, like in Greek tragedies, man, for every day for a long time. And initially it was scary, and I couldn't do it alone. I couldn't do it alone, although I'm pretty skilled at this, you know, I'm pretty stable, but I was like, whoa. So I needed actually peer support. I will reach out to somebody from community. But gradually I realized, hey, this wailing comes and then it goes, and actually I'm good afterwards, and it's okay, and it's safe to just be like in Greek tragedies. and then it moved, and it moved, and it moved. And it was not just moving grief. As this grief was coming, which was subterranean, oceanic losses, it might not even be, I mean, it's mine from this life, but it might be from another life. It might be my father's and my ancestors. But as this thing was releasing by me, encouraging it, I also started to have great insights, liberating insights, like, oh my God, I have been doing this to myself. I'm recreating abandonment over and over. I abandon people, and I don't need to do this anymore. And actually, I started insights about love and about, yeah. So by feeling deeply from awareness, it also revealed some deeper schema like operating system of my subconscious. And yeah, so that's how I need to have tools, you need to have willingness, courage, support, and to have suffering. and to meet the suffering, because just suffering is not enough. Gurdjieff was saying everybody suffers without any result, but
Right.
conscious intentional suffering with tools, then it can bring about.
Yeah. I know we're going to talk about Inside Out, and I don't know if we're going to spend this video to get to it, because we have a lot to say about it, but this just keeps bringing up things, because you said something really quickly, and I want to just bring it back for everybody, because this is a big miss, I think, is that when you rest with a contraction like you said it goes down, and then you move on to something else. That's what I'm calling the Cartesian split. But let me just explain it to people again, because I think this is where we're bypassing a big part of it. Is if you have a big energy like he's talking about, it's especially sometimes it's localized in the sternum or somewhere, pain, something. When you rest with it in first dimension, when you're not making the programming conscious that is creating it, when you rest with it, it can recede back to the unconscious, and you can actually feel more regulated and open. But it's because it receded away from conscious or out of consciousness that it feels that openness is there. It's the difference when I heard you talking is that you picked up different skills, first, second, and then third dimension. And that stopped happening. You weren't just resting in something that was receding. Now you're resting with something and you're keeping it alive in awareness, and you can see the identifications, make the stuff conscious. But that's a big point to make, because we were just talking about the dimensions. That in first dimension, a lot of times all we can do is rest with something, and there's a false confidence almost, because there's a big energy that comes up, I'm going to rest, and then here it goes. But as it goes down, all the programming that keeps it in place goes with it.
Yeah.
And then now we can't access it, and we just carry it around, again.
Yeah, even in first dimension practices, there was this concept of welcome your feelings completely, welcome the sensation, let go resisting it. And I really love those, but I wasn't able to do it properly. It was just a little bit. I was just doing it a little bit, and there was still this secret agenda of, okay, I'm welcoming it, but actually I really don't want to feel this, and I want this to go away. And yeah, you know what I was doing, even as I opened to the second dimension KI, about seeing, limiting beliefs and processing some aspect of the pain body. But I would still have this, for me, which was like the most painful stuff. I think for you was anger, repression, rage. For me, it was sadness, grief. This stuff will come in the evening after work, after working with clients, psychotherapists, yeah? So I will just watch movie, then it goes down, and focusing on the object, then this goes down. Smoke weed right after work, to relax. Or even do stuff like guided meditations, non-dual meditations. Yeah, so all of this had the same effect. It will go down. But it's interesting, what was happening is that also, if you are busy, I'm busy all day. If I'm busy all day, this goes down. And so it will come after work, and I will suppress it, basically. It was trying to come, I would suppress it with substances, activities, or spiritual practices. So what was happening is that I will wake up in the morning with a big contraction in my chest. And I was like, what is this, man? Why is this happening in the morning? It's not fair. And I could see that, hey, well, if you don't allow it when it comes in the evening, it has no choice but to come in the morning. So at some point I made the shift, like as it was coming in the evening, I would not smoke weed, and I will go into a little bit of third dimension. I'm not sad, I'm not afraid. No, I'm afraid. And I'll go into some, rapid fire and stuff, just to meet it as it was happening. And I noticed that it would be much less in the morning. But still, these stuff are so buried for me. It was so buried that was not enough. I really needed to be pushed against the wall and to go to because I was not going to the underground reservoir. I was just moving things that were coming up, you know. So here is like where third dimension comes up, I guess.
Yeah, and also inside out, because you're starting to talk the inside out language now in mind, because you're saying there's a compulsion here, but I wasn't getting to the root programming. I was tuning out with the compulsion, or here's some other form of suffering. I wasn't getting to, you could the deep reservoir. That's the inside out. Inside out path says, look at these things happening in our lives, these different forms of suffering, whatever it is, and see if that's directly connected to this, which is the unprocessed emotional stuff that we're holding since childhood. And if it is, then the practice of inside out is then connecting that up in practice. So in other words, when whatever it is appears, instead of just questioning mind or whatever else, you go to the root programming, the unprocessed emotion. You go straight from like, here's a shadow in my life, current life, to this is coming from, if you're an anger repressor, holding on to anger since childhood. So you go back in the practice to connect up what's happening presently with the deep reservoir in the body from the past. That's really the crux of the inside out path. And you started to talk about it and without talking about it there.
So this is a crucial, essential component of the inside out path. And that basically, right? I mean, correct me and expand on it. Any unease, lack, judgment, projection, compulsion, addiction, trigger, self-sabotage, stagnation,
pain
comes from actually something underneath, something even deeper than limiting beliefs. Actually, the limiting beliefs that I'm not good enough and there's something wrong with me actually is fueled. Yeah, that's the thing. All of this problematic, painful, psychological stuff and chronic pain, they are fueled from some deeper level of pain body, where is the trauma, the trauma adaptation, how we adapted to survive, and the aftermath of trauma. So that is like the bottom, like this is like the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
Where everything, the sense of separation is formed out of these gases bubbling up to the surface, right? And so the inside out path is to, hey, since we verified this, let's train yourself so you start go there pretty soon, not after you have some awakening or something.
Yes, that's a great way of saying it. There's so much to say about this, or different directions to go. But I think the thing that I want to say to people about inside out is there's a somatic testing that we do that's an important piece of this. Because first of all, what's the value of inside out? Why should we do it? Those questions are very valid. Like we should be questioning the path. Like, why? Because we have to find the right answers. If we don't find the right answers, we won't do the path. But I think that the right answers are found through experience and through verifying what you're holding in your body from the beginning of the path. So that way you don't have to rely on us. You can just go, okay, I have a trigger here, or I tend to get triggered with people who are authority, for example, just as an example. Okay, so in the beginning of the path, we know that that's already an issue for you. We're talking about it, but we want to link it up to, well, where's it coming from? And you may discover then that it's coming from repression, because shadows often do. Let's say it's anger repression. So therefore, now you know something that you would not have known on another path. You would have known not only that you have shadows, that you have this shadow, that you know that it comes from repression, but you know directly that it comes directly from your anger repression. You know that you hold that in your body, and you might even know then where you're holding it. You know all of that, so that as you live your life now, when a shadow comes up, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You already know where the source of your suffering is, so it takes you more quickly back to the root of it to process. On the outside in path or other outside in paths where the unconsciousness is not illuminated in the beginning of the path, it's almost like you have to reinvent the wheel every time. Like, okay, I'm believing this. Where does this come from? Well, we are intelligent beings. like you can see and understand your system because you don't have to like pretend like you have no sense of where this is coming from. Because if you go down into your body, you'll see again that it's coming from some of the same programming that you tested it with at the beginning. You're going to see, well, there it is again. I don't want to open to anger. Here it is again. So it arms people with insight, based on their own experience. It's like they understand, they map out their somatic experience. And so then when they start practicing, it just all makes sense to me that then you now know where to go when all these things arise. Whereas in other paths, to tell you, I didn't always know where to go. Like I did not know that when a trigger arose that it was connected to repression of anger. So I just didn't go there. I didn't have an inside out path. So when a trigger came up, I did like a lot of people do, is in awareness-based stuff, just rest and let that be, right? Just rest and let that be. But with the inside out path, I would know from the beginning that when my trigger comes up, it's probably going to be the usual deficiency story. Again, because with somatic testing, you know what it is. When you're triggered, you see it again. I'm unlovable is here again. But you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to sit there and go, wonder where this is coming from. You go straight to mom and dad and you discover that it's coming from everything else it's coming from is you can't open to hurt or fear. That's the thing that's driving everything, whatever that is, that primary.
Yeah.
So I think that's the crux of the inside out path is, and the other thing I want to say about it is that in some ways, the inside out path is exactly what your nervous system does not want. So you have to understand that when you're listening to me, this is actually turning everything inside out. So it's like, it's showing you everything about what's driving everything. And so that's when your resistance can really come up, when you really start to see where it's coming from. And if you don't verify it through the somatic testing, that's when the mind comes in to protect you. And it might do it by fogging out around this conversation, like by, I don't understand. So that's just the system protecting itself. Or they're wrong, which we could be wrong. But the question is, where's that coming from? Is that coming from self-protection or any other thing? Inside out, we get under this from the beginning. We don't just find a trigger because Mihai and Scott are talking and we're wondering where it's coming from, or that we just think we're right. We look and we see, is this trigger coming from the repression? See, everything is brought to the work. Like all forms of suffering end up being a pointer back to the root of it.
It's interesting. I was doing even like a few years ago, the very opposite of this, following some non-dual pointers. And I'm sure that there is validity and truth to that. But, I will do this like, and I'm not sure, maybe modern man is a different type of wounding than people 1,000 years ago. I'm not sure. Modern man is so, anyway, but basically I will have something in my body. I'll be triggered. And I will be like, who is triggered? To whom does this upsetness appear? Find the one that is upset. She said, then I will go and I'll be like, oh, I can't find the one upset. I just find these sensations. And am I this sensation? No, I'm that which is aware of this sensation. Okay, so let's just stay as that. And I believe Ramana talking about these things, and but definitely that didn't work for me and everybody that I know.
Well, I think there's a reason for it. God bless Ramana, because it's not even his fault. It feels like that we didn't understand trauma back then. And with trauma, as you know, it's like the programming doesn't want to arise. So if you say, who am I to what? To what are you saying that to? Because if the programming that says, I have to hold this emotion back for safety because I'm afraid, if that's not arising, but that's part of the ego structure that we're talking about, then how can you say to whom it will arise? Because it's not arising, that particular programming.
Yeah.
So you might be able to say it about the effects that are coming up.
Yeah.
The effects are like identity, story, all that stuff that is visible, you can say, to whom is this arising? And you can even see, well, it's arising to no one, but you still aren't getting to the programming that created it. That's the trauma.
Yeah.
That's the thing I think that Ramana didn't have the benefit of. It's not his fault. It's just like historically, we just as a species didn't understand this, I don't think. We just, you know, within the last 150 years, maybe more. But the simple fact to understand is that you can't just sit here and expect that the deepest roots of the identity making are going to appear. When I say the deepest roots, I mean, it's not even I. It's not I am this or that. I'm talking about something under it, which is, it's an I, but it doesn't have to do with so much who I am. It's survival. It's pure survival is what it is. It's like, I can't express that. It's not safe. I'm going to die. You know, that kind of thing just doesn't arise to be asking that who am I question. It was
so in the example I was giving, basically there was just some pain body coming. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't see what it says. I wouldn't see what the thoughts are. I wouldn't see what is the core limiting belief behind it. I didn't know barely what is underneath in terms of repression. So there was just something totally uninvestigated that I will use and then turn the other way. Turn the other way and realize that I am that which is aware of it, which is true. And that will go away. Yeah, but what you are saying, actually, I can see now that the Ramana was right in some way, but okay, hey, how about really before you turn 180 on it, how about let's bring it up more, let's investigate it thoroughly. Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living. I mean, unexamined life is painful, basically. So it opens up, it unpacks. There's feelings, there is memories, there's images. And as I see them and feel them, it's obvious now that Ramana is right. Yeah. Microphone.
But for some of us, I think there was a step missing when we were listening to teachers like that, because we have to talk about the big elephant in the room. The big elephant is, as clear as Ramana was, there haven't been a ton of people who've awakened and embodied. If it was that obvious, it should be obvious to so many people. So we now know that something is missing for most of us who don't have the Ramana experience, where it appears that he just woke up and his whole thing was, I mean, that's the folklore. We don't know if it's true, but in other words, there wasn't much embodiment as far as we can tell that he needed to do. That's rare, I think, among humans. Yeah. And so the rest of us are the elephant in the room, which means we keep coming back. And this ties into what you said earlier, is like, we have to talk about the elephant. And for a lot of people, the elephant is the body, even if they don't articulate it. Mm-hmm. And so they're coming to these teachings, and they came back to me saying, I hear what you're saying, that it all appears to no one, or I'm the awareness, but something, I can't get to it. And I think that the reason that we haven't been able to communicate it to people is one of the reasons is because of this, is because we weren't including trauma. So if people go to Ramana and they hear it's all appearing to the awareness, the people with trauma can't see it because the trauma programming is hidden. And so there's the elephant. They have the stuff, the self-contraction still operating, but the pointers that are being used can't get to it. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So he's right.
Yeah.
But there's another piece of it, which is we can't see what he's talking about if what's happening for us is completely buried and we don't have the tools to bring that into awareness.
It's so important this was a core principle in the fourth way teaching. That was my beginning. Like, don't believe anything. Don't believe this teaching. Don't. Because we already have all these beliefs. Now, you don't want some more belief. Try to be open-minded and try to check for yourself. Try to verify. And although I knew that and I did that, at some point I will stop doing that and then believe stuff.
Yeah.
And same. So we encourage people with not to believe what we are saying here, but to be open, try to verify. Coming back to Ramana, he also, this one of these teachers that, I don't know, they say from past life, he's done a lot of work. And so then in this life, it's just unraveled completely, totally. There are other people like that, very few, like Robert Adams, maybe Eckhart Tolle. But like, I remember that with Ramana, he was saying that this was happening and there was this major shift that seemed to be abiding and embodied, but he didn't know what's happening. He didn't know what's happening. So later he read some non-dual teachings and Advaita stuff, because before he had this experience, he was actually not into non-duality and Advaita. He was like a devotee of Shiva or something like that. He was more like devotional. I mean, he was a kid. He was a teenager. So basically this was happening. His mind didn't know what's happening and he wasn't concerned. But I guess he came across some of these ancient teachings and he was like, oh, I see, that's what's happening. So then he created a teaching to help people somehow, but that teaching didn't help him. And a little bit like Eckhart Tolle too. This was happening, and then like the 2 years on the park bench, and then he started reading some teachings, and he was like, "Oh, I see. Okay."
There's something to that, something important there. I don't know what to say about that, but I hadn't thought about it that way before, because a lot of us wake up and experience happens. We don't exactly know how that happened. And then we try to teach it, we try to go back and teach it. But, and that's somewhat true of the inside out path, because, we're discovered reversing repression here, and now we're trying to teach it. But I think the thing here is verify. I think you can't go wrong if you verify. So in other words, anything that we're saying, if you go down, what would be a good way to verify what Ramana is saying, or what we're saying just in connection to what Ramana taught? Well, it would be like, for example, if you sit there and you ask, who am I? Or you see things coming and going. But then as you sit there and you just live your life in that first dimension, neti thing where you look, just live your life, pay attention to how suffering continues. For many people, it'll continue. It might get quieter as you do the who am I. You might have more of a sense of presence, of course, but look for suffering, including diseases and chronic pain and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, if you start to verify KI, like you come into KI and you say, for example, I'm not angry at mom and dad. And what comes up is, and you didn't know it was there. Yes, I am. And like this energy that you didn't know. There, if you'll trust that, you can't trust, trust your own experience. So now you know that there's conditioning that's coming up that you couldn't see. So in other words, for the first time, you're seeing like conditioning and feeling it like, I can't show hurt. I can't feel it. That's new. See, So verifying is so important, because then you could go back to what Ramana is saying and saying, he's right, but this conditioning wasn't arising. Now this is arising. I can bring this into awareness and also see this is not me, or this becomes part of the awakening process. But right there is a verification that I can't teach it. There's no way to teach it. I can't say it and then everybody goes, oh yeah, I get it. Because you actually have to verify. You actually have to see that there's some conditioning that doesn't arise to awareness. Some intelligence about keeping us surviving is not arising to awareness. And that's very much part of the ego in the body. But again, if it doesn't arise, you can completely dismiss it. You can pretend like it's not there. You can have a realization that's half-baked because you're pretending like it's not there. And I do think that at a certain point, if you have trauma and repression, by continuing to follow the first dimension teachings, even Ramana, you could continue to miss it. I know there's going to be people out there like, how dare he say that? But I'm just telling you that it's so easy to miss this because it's buried.
Yeah. Yeah, I this is what I realized for myself, that the KI was just helping me do what these teachings were asking me to do, what these non-dual teachings. Or, you know, Jung is talking like, hey, if you want to be okay, or if you want to reach, I'm not sure what he was saying, but you need to make the unconscious conscious, making the unconscious conscious. Other teachers will say, what you are not aware of has power over you. Yeah. So KI is simply a very thorough and methodical and surgical set of tools to really make the unconscious conscious. Yeah, it's not a revolutionary, it's not something new. That's what the sages wanted us to do, to investigate thoroughly our sense of separation, to bring everything to awareness, right? So it's not like we are not changing everything. No, it's just, hey, this is a way that they wanted me to do it, but I couldn't do it because they didn't explain how. And there was these myths and distortions. And so this is just a way to make that happen, to examine thoroughly, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really important thing to say, because again, if people are listening to us without verifying first, the mind comes in, and the old paradigm and the practices that the mind has been programmed in might not be able to hear us. That's one of the big issues with this message, like a public awareness issue, because it's like, we know that when we verify, we see this. We know that when we go into the body and we see stuff was hidden, we finally bring it, make it conscious. It all lines up for us in direct experience. The issue is how, if we fight the message, we don't ever verify it. And that's what a lot of the work that I'm doing now is, I think, is just trying to help people through this barrier, like helping people understand that this is going on, because there's a lot of resistance to even acknowledging that this is happening for people, especially people, you know, teachers are coming to the work, as you know, even in the members area, they're quietly coming in and learning this, because I think people see it. But a big part of it is like, you have to just sit and go, despite any disagreements that I might have with Mihai or Scott, screw them. I'm going to go to the video and I'm going to verify myself. I'm going to prove to them that I don't have repression. Do it that way. I'm going to prove to you, but be earnest. See, you have to be earnest. If your ego is trying to prove that we're wrong, that's not earnestness. It's not earnestness. But if you're going into your body to discover what's really there and to be very honest about it, that's verifying. That's earnest, and you could trust that. You don't have to trust us. Trust yourself, though, and do the verifying. And I think that's where it comes into play. Until then, it's all mind and defense and self-protection and just trying to disagree on the level of that mind. And that's not going to help you on this path. It's going to help you, but only to take you down to where that's coming from. The defense, the self-protection is coming from something.
Yeah, I love this, how some of these people who have done a lot of deep work, or even realized awareness, those that are more like self-honest and open, and maybe not too famous yet, I'm not sure what the criteria is, that they are checking this and verifying this. There's pretty well-known young non-dual teacher who I see his teaching changed and his video changed, and using terms like frozen fear and repression. He's updating his teaching now, which is great. I think it's Matt Garrett.
Oh, Matt, yeah. I like it.
Also, I have a friend of mine is in Europe, and he is a meditation teacher doing retreats and doing this very well. And then he found your teaching and came to me as a client, and then sadness, repression, this or that. He's like, oh my God. So he's training now. And I became friends with him. It's hard for him. I can see he's going to change what he's doing. I mean, he's still going to do first dimension what he's doing, but he's starting to realize it's not enough. I mean, he realized already it's not enough. So he's going to upgrade his teaching to have more dimensions.
Yeah, there's some other ones too, even more well-known, that are paying attention and changing their message. That's the thing, is that there's openness. That's great to hear that there's openness out there. That's what it takes to verify. I'm telling you, like, once you get past a certain place in KI, you're okay. In other words, you have to verify. If you're not sitting down to verify, it could be a problem. But once you do, I think some of these teachers are just verifying. They're probably sitting here and going, yeah, I know that there's freedom here. I can see that direct experience, but is he right about that? Is there still something? And then once you do that, as long as you're honest, you're okay. But the big part of it is just getting people, and sometimes teachers are the worst, frankly. They're like doctors, they're the worst patients, is that they just won't come in and test it out. If they test it out, it starts to change your teaching, because you have to, once you recognize that, at some point you have to recognize that something was missed.
Mm-hmm. All right, so, as we have this talk, I'm realizing that somehow this is so rich, and we didn't, only towards the end now we are at the point to really outline the inside out path. And I believe your aim is to have already something, a path like that from a newbie, somebody who comes to, they want to work on themselves or free themselves from suffering, or they want to attain enlightenment, or they have chronic pain, whatever the case, to have a path, which is a map. It's a map, yeah. It's not real, but it is based on experience, and it can lead to freedom.
Yeah.
So to have something from the very beginning that it's doesn't bypass and cultivates both mindfulness, presence, who am I, as well as discovering my own deficiency stories and my patterns and my compulsions and my repressions, and they teach what to do in a way that doesn't need correction later.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we want to do, and actually we are going to do this for episode 30, which I think it's auspicious. So we're going to have one more episode where we are going to go straight into outlining somehow this inside out path. Yeah. And I thought maybe we can touch from a few more minutes here this phenomena that is very strong. I see it, people coming to me, and I see it on YouTube. In relation to this now, YouTube brings up all of these people who have some awakening experience, and they have a shift that is very wonderful and life-changing, and then there's a hype about that. It's a big hype about that, and it's like that's and with the idea that, hey, this is it, and then go for that. And then so people out there, they're like, whoa, I want that, I want this shift, I want it. And they are saying that if I have this, then everything collapses and everything is good. And so yeah, so there's that develops, so the sense of lack, the trauma and the deficiency, this already creates a sense of lack. This is already, the sense of lack is coming from that.
Mm-hmm.
And the seeking of relief comes from that. Now you put on a bunch of like 400 YouTube videos talking about awakening. Now the seeking for relief goes now for seeking for enlightenment.
Yeah.
And so that is a whole other dynamism that goes somewhere and can, which is noble in some way, but we are seeking relief. So how you deconstruct that, how you can bring this inside out path to this?
I would say that anybody who has trauma and repression would be really drawn to the any pointing that says you don't have to deal with that, transcend and just wake up. That's going to be appealing to anybody who doesn't want to feel something, even if they're not conscious of it. And I think that's part of why we get drawn into it. It sells because it's a promise that feels safe to our nervous system. And actually, it's more than that. It feels rewarding. Like we're going to be awakened. We're going to be enlightened. That we're going to be looked up to, whatever else. It's going to be something good. It's not going to be anger and hurt that we have to go to. So I think that we should say that off the bat for people in case they don't know. If you have trauma and repression, you would be necessarily drawn to that message more than this one, for sure. Because
so maybe we can do a role play vignette.
Yeah.
So that is really practical. And so I am the seeker. Yeah, are you okay with that?
Yeah, yeah.
I'm seeker, and I'm coming to you as a former non-dual teacher, current teacher. I was like, so Scott, I read your books, and then there's something really special about what you have realized, and I hear this all the time, and I want that. I want that. I'm focusing on it all day. I try everything. I go to a lot of retreats. I don't get it. I don't get it, and I want it. I want it, and if only I can have this realization, everything. Yeah. So this is my life. My life is for this. And I tried, I meditated, I have this maybe 3-4 days or 2 weeks of this bliss. I have this bliss, I lost it. And then I'm back into this, and I'm like in my house, and I'm not having shower, and I'm depressed. But I really will do anything to realize what I am. What should I do?
So I would take you through a set of inquiries, but what I would say is, you said, if only I could have that realization, I would do anything. I would say, you would do anything for what?
Yeah, we can go on with this. Because it's in us.
Well, yeah, just role play it, even if it doesn't feel true. You can just
yeah. So say it again.
What would you accomplish? So if you do anything, if you would die to this realization, what will it give you?
Yeah,
you have that you don't have right now.
Yeah. It will give me. I will just be. I don't have this monkey mind, these thoughts all the time.
Yeah.
I'm stressed, so I'll be at peace, and I would be at peace.
Yeah,
and I would be free from this turmoil. And, and I will know God.
That's good. So that's what a lot of people say, free from the turmoil. But my question is, okay, but what are you really saying? So if you drill that down, if I took you through inquiry, and you really brought it into the somatic, and you got out of your mind there, you might find that, oh, well, there's certain things I don't want to feel. These things that I don't want to feel are connected to this monkey mind and the suffering. And so I would take you down there and show you that there's definitely programming down here that says, I don't want to feel something. And I would show you how that programming is connected to some of the stories and the monkey mind stuff. And that therefore, the reason that you're looking for the awakening is the promise that you ultimately, that you wouldn't have to feel this somehow. And then you could just be awake. And then we give you this nice little bypass.
Yeah.
You don't have to deal with any of that. Are you interested?
Yeah. Right. So you're like the turmoil. Basically, you are pointing me to what's happening in my body, and agitation and contraction. I have contractions in the back of my neck and in the jaw and here. And I also stressful, man, because I need to please I need to make sure everybody's okay with me, and I'm tired of it, but I can't stop it.
Another question I might ask you is, as you're coming to the path, I would say, how do you feel? Do you feel that the way out is through all that, to feel all that? Or are you here because you think there might be a way that you can wake up without having to feel that? Because I think the answer to that question would be really telling in terms of what we're doing here.
Well, I know Angelo, this teacher, and this teacher, they say, hey, just realize what I am. I want to realize what I am, because then it's going to be great. All of them, they are saying it's great after that. So I want to get that.
Right. And if we took it out of the mind and we took it into inquiry, probably, and I could even do it with you, if you say, as a utility inquiry, I get nothing at all, nothing out of saying, I want that. And
you know, it's interesting, Scott. I'm really going, you know, I actually did some acting before, and if you really get into it, you are it.
I know, totally. Yeah.
I'm feeling now this in my chest. I'm like, oh man,
Yeah, right.
like, ah. So if I get that,
Yeah, what do you get out of believing that you have to have it? Look, I don't get anything out of it. Can we just start there and see if there's
don't get anything out of believing what?
that I will, yeah, that I want this realization. I'll do like that, whatever it is in your own words. I don't get anything out of believing that that's what I have to get, is that realization.
Yeah. What am I getting out of believing I want that? I get to
feel into your body first and see, is there anything responding? Like if I say I don't get anything out of it, does your body agree?
I don't get anything out of believing that if I get that, everything is going to be okay or something. I don't know what's happening, but in my body, I have this like actually contraction, tension, unpleasantness in my chest, and I don't like this. I don't like it. I don't like it. And those people on YouTube, they don't have that. And so that's why I want awareness.
So this is important right here. So can you just go into that contraction and say, I want to feel it? And then we already know the answer because you already said it, but what's your response?
I want to feel this thing in my chest. I hate this. I hate it. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I like it and I hate it. I always have it. I hate it.
So right there, I would say now we've linked up, we're doing inside out. We've linked up the fact that there's something in your body that you hate and you don't want to feel. So we know that that's there. And earnestness requires you to acknowledge and be honest about it. That's what earnestness is. So we know that's there. Now, the question is that linked up to the seeking in any way? And if you look, there's different inquiries to get to it. For example, if I said, I want you to look at this attainment that you're seeking, like visualize this thing that you would die for.
Yeah.
And the body's involved in that. There might be some energy. But so then what does it reflect back that you're not there?
Yeah, so I want to be one with everything. I want to feel this non-separation. I don't like this. I'm feeling this all the time.
Yeah.
I hope that if I realize that's going to go away.
Yeah, what would go away?
This thing that I don't like in my chest. I don't know even what it is.
There you go. So right there, linking up and seeing that I don't want to feel this and I'm seeking so I don't have to feel this. The question then is still, is the way out through that or somehow around that? And then I would say this, you already have been trying to get around it. That's the repression. So if you try to go around it in spirituality, you're just reinforcing trauma. So I don't know if I've taken you deep enough in it to see to where
I don't know. It's like hard to follow you, but I'm getting more now a little angry and sad at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
So it's hard to follow you because you're feeling stuff. It's really authentic, but people watching, they saw you go through the process where you were seeking enlightenment. You want this thing, but you weren't connected to your body. Yeah. Now you're connecting to your body and you're seeing, I don't want to feel that. And then everybody's watching, probably going, well, that's why you would have the seeking there, is because you don't want to feel that. So at some point it sinks in to the inside beginning that the reason that I want the realization is because I don't want to feel that. And then that explains the bypass that's coming for most people, is that they just don't want to feel something. So they're hearing the promise of transcendence. And implicit in the promise is, without teachers saying it, is that you don't have to feel that. Sometimes they do say it. And that to an ego that's traumatized is delicious. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, actually I was listening to David Hawkins and some time ago, and he was talking, I don't know if he said that, but I get it, that imperturbability, man. I want that. Yeah. So I wanted that. I wanted special. You had an interview with me and you asked me some time ago, you interviewed me and you said, hey, besides this noble pursuit of truth, was there anything else that was driving your path? And I was like, yeah, one specialness, super special now, because if I'm enlightened, I'm super special, and recognition, and I'm super special, better than everybody. And then imperturbability, man, which means like, no matter what's happening, I'm unaffected.
You know what? There's so much there, can I say? Because the ego that wants to be enlightened is also a remnant of the past. It's still unprocessed stuff from mom and dad, wanting to be special because you feel deficient. There it is. And then the and I can't even say that word. I don't use the word.
Yeah.
It again for me.
Imperturbability. I'm not affected by anything that's happening. My girlfriend gives me, I have no money, I'm sick. Like,
yeah. So if you were to talk about awareness doesn't have that agenda. It doesn't have an agenda to not be bothered by anything. But the ego that's self-protecting has an agenda to not be bothered by anything. So what I would say is there can be that kind of experience where you're not touched by anything, but because you've been touched by everything, like you've gone to all those places, you're not hiding from those places. It feels like that perpetuity, whatever that word is. I'm sorry, I can't say it. It comes as a result of actually meeting things and not being afraid of those things.
I didn't want to be disturbed by anything. And
but see what I mean? Like if you listen to the language of the repressed individual, whether it's a teacher or a student, you can hear the repression in the spiritual talk. You can hear how it comes in. Like, I want to be at a place where I'm not bothered by anything. Right. Awareness doesn't. You do. You want that. And so when that awareness starts to show up and you're really embodying it, it will be like that. You will not have triggers. You probably won't have suffering. But how do you get to that is the question. Because if you're coming from the repression mechanism that says, I want to get there, but I don't want to have to feel anything on the way. See, because I think that we get there by being open to feel everything. It's ironic, but it's like,
there's some teacher that I like these days that says, hey, enlightenment is to feel everything. I mean, I think it's more to that, but there's the encouraging to feel everything consciously. And
easier said than done, right? But I hope that people watching could take that and then follow us to the next video, because if you could see how we deconstructed the seeking there, and people may not have gone through it to really feel it, but if you do that, you could verify it. And if you verify that your seeking is coming from repression and trauma, then I think you become interested in what else is driven by that, because that's the inside out path. Like, how much is being driven by what I don't want to feel? That's the inside out path.
It's obvious. I'm seeking, I mean, as this dedicated seeker, addicted to YouTube videos and books, which is like better than be addicted to other stuff, you know what I mean? I'm seeking relief, and I don't want to feel psychological pain that I'm having. I'm seeking relief, and the difference between people are doing meth or cocaine is that I am somehow, I'm open to the spiritual teachings, and there's something to it, and there's definitely something to it, but I'm imagining that if I get that, then this is I won't have this. That will give me relief, but I'm unwilling to feel. I don't even know it. I think we have this mechanism of not wanting to feel very deep and legitimate, not feel discomfort, and they are so strong, and this is running the path I don't want to feel.
I think it's a big find, because a couple of people this week have said to me, you said it even, people were coming to you like, how's the inside out path about awakening? Where's the awareness piece? Where's the attainment? And I was like, it's definitely part of this. We want to bring the awareness, seeing in from the beginning. But if you could also bring from the beginning this whole deconstruction of why you're seeking and what's behind it, that's going to be a game changer. Because if you don't see it, then you just blindly seek. You just blindly do it, not realizing you're not wanting to feel something. But here in Inside Out, you're going to continue seeking, because that's part of your suffering, but that's going to pull you back to the resistance of the emotions behind it. And that's the difference there. If people can just click with what you just saw, what you just did, and if they resonate with that, that's the thing I want to invite them into, because there's more for us to show you around how all forms of suffering are kind of coming from our trauma. Most of them, not everything. But if you can't see it, you can't see it. This is a way to see it. Just took you through those exercises. You could see it. That is true for everything. Chronic pain, everything. We can link it up that way.
You put recently, or you shared a quote from Jeff Brown, which I really like, and there was something to do that, people are concerned with the monkey mind, endless monkey mind, many thoughts, and it's stressful, and so
Got it right.
First dimension practices, they are dealing with the monkey mind, trying to watch the monkey mind, calm the monkey mind, concentrate it, this or that, settle it. But he was saying that, and actually Francis was saying this too, hey, all of this busyness in the mind comes from the emotional body. And actually you are not aware of those, you are not meeting them, and those just playing in the head. So, and Jeff Brown was saying that, hey, actually it's the monkey heart. And actually it's the monkey heart, meaning that the body keeps the score, and there's your whole of this stuff that are there and you don't want to feel. And so, hey, why don't you go? So the monkey mind is a effect of the somatic pain body. Yeah. I verified this, and many people have here in this path that by processing thoroughly some of this stuff, you see a correlated diminishment of this daydreaming and restlessness. Yeah.
I like that quote from Jeff. I was just reading it. That's another part of the public awareness thing around awakening, because it feels like most of us come to this awakening conversation still from the mind, like in the beginning, and it takes a while for us to go all the way down to see some of the source of it. So these kinds of messages that we hear early in the path are helpful, like from Jeff, to say, and we've learned it too in KI, that you can spend a lot of time processing the endless hall of mirrors, and there's time for that. That's helpful too. But until you get to the root of it, the monkey mind continues. That's the thing. So what we're seeing even if it gets quieter, it still continues because it's connected to the body. That's another thing about Inside Out, is that's not something that you have to wait late in your path to discover. You start to discover that when you're excessive thinking or something, that's also connected to, I don't want to feel something. And once you open to it, the monkey mind just can relax, because you've gotten to the source of it. It's not the mind that's happening all by itself like that. It's connected in some way to that down there. So Inside Out, we just hopefully see it early, so we don't just treat it like a mind that's happening by itself.
Yeah.
I like that quote. It's until we stop blaming the mind and recognize that anxiety stems from the unresolved emotional body, there will be no liberation.
Yeah. All right. I think that was Rich, and then we have a plan to do one more, number 30, to be focused on how to actually make this practical from the beginning of the path, and how to weave in developing concentration, mindfulness, discovering presence, while also starting to mine out, to open the hood and discover our core programs. And as we do that and we cultivate awareness, we are getting more resourced. Our nervous system gets more ability to withstand unpleasant emotions, and we get more, stable. So we can actually go to the very core root of suffering and continue all these 3 dimensions at the same time. And how to don't wait after some realization, it may never happen, or let's start from the beginning, to be to not bypass, and to have a more thorough integrated approach.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking of how we set an intention to talk about inside out today, but we didn't get to but I think there's a reason for that. And I want to say this before we go is, people see me doing a lot of videos and now there's 30 of these, but even with all of that out there, people get stuck in this path, even with it all out there. So there's context is really important on this path because we're correcting a paradigm almost, a worldview, a reality that we're, like a set of practices that have missed some things. So there's such a powerful force within us that resists this, that we have to talk about it. And even though we set the intention to talk about inside and out, I think what you and I did is we sat here, we recognized that not everybody's just going to be able to jump into inside out if they don't understand the preparatory work that happens in first and second dimension and why you wouldn't even be open to that. So I think it was a good, but I also want to say to everybody listening, if we are going to get to that in our next video, I think we're going to break down the mechanics now that we've talked about it.
Yeah.
Hopefully even more.
And, I heard somewhere, I hope it's true, like Buddha had like 40,000 sutras he wrote. I mean, it's a lot of talking of stuff. So I think it's okay.
Well, the other thing is, just since we're speaking loosely, is that I think a lot of it is, again, it's a block coming from the mind. So I've heard people say this or that about the work, or you keep talking about it or whatever. There's so many videos. It's a red herring, because once you start doing the work, you verify it all. You understand the context. All we're doing with these talks is trying to help people come into experience what we're doing.
Yeah, and somehow there is a place where you can take this. This is like conceptual, philosophical, intellectual. We are all explaining based on having done this work within ourselves and others. Yeah. But there is a place. There's the KI members area, actually, and I'll put a link in this video, where this resonates with you, or you're already doing this, but you're kind of stuck, or it's like, it's not going so well. Sangha, I mean, Sangha is important. So there's this community where we are experientially doing this work in a group, in one-on-one, a lot of videos, very practical. So you can check that out.
Thanks, Mihai.
Right. All right. Thank you. See you next time. Ciao.